Well, welcome to the Meet the Candidates forum co-hosted by Noon Kiwanis and Access Television. I am Sarah Duffy and I'm Vice President of Noon Kiwanis. It's our privilege to provide an opportunity for residents to become familiar with the people running for City Council office. Today's forum will be broadcast several times on PEG Access prior to elections on Tuesday, November 8th. We will also upload a link to social media and the city website. I am pleased to be your moderator for all the forums in this series. Today we will meet the candidates from Ward 2. We have Scott Kwame, Tom Rufer, and Ted Steenbach. Ward 2 represents citizens in generally the northeast part of the city. These residents vote at the National Guard Armory. Before we go into our introductions and question and answer session, I'll go through a little ground rules that we'll have for the day. We'll open today with each candidate introducing themselves or himself and sharing with us why they are running for City Council. They will have 3 minutes for this introduction. After that, we'll go into the question and answer session. We will rotate who answers first so there's no unfair advantage. The answer time for the question and answer session will be 2 minutes per question. Jean here will be our timekeeper, and she will wave the yellow flag when there are 30 seconds remaining, and the red flag when the time is up, when the 2 minutes are up.
Don't mess with me.
All candidates have seen these questions, so there is no unfair advantage to going first. We'll start the clock when the candidates begin speaking. If any of you need me to repeat a question, just ask me to do that, and I would be happy to. We'll conclude today by offering each candidate the opportunity to give a 2-minute closing statement. We ask that the audience respectively listen to each candidate's answers and avoid conversations during the forum. Please also hold your applause until the end. And we also ask that you either silence or turn off your cell phone so we don't have any disruptions. Thank you. Is everybody ready? All right, so again, we'll start with the 3-minute introductions. And Scott, you can go first.
Great. Power off my phone while I'm at it. I'd like to start off by thanking everyone who's here today for coming, taking time out of your schedules to be here, and for those who are watching on TV as well. Thank you for taking the time and expressing your interest in the goings-on of the city by your presence here today and by taking the time to do this. I was first introduced to the city of Fergus Falls in 1975 when I came as a junior to go to school at Hillcrest Academy. And I started there, went for 2 years, graduated in 1977. And just this last weekend, Hillcrest celebrated its 100th anniversary and got a little splash in the paper. That was kind of fun to be a part of it. And I was over there for some of those activities. But that's how I got to first get to know a little bit about Fergus Falls, just as a student in the dormitory over there. After graduation, I went to Morehead State University, and after graduating from Morehead State, I spent about 10 years traveling the country and working a lot of different places. I was in Colorado, California, Montana, out on the East Coast, worked in a lot of different areas and did a lot of things, and enjoyed it for the most part. And then Doug Hansen, my friend from here in Fergus Falls, offered me a job, and I came to work for him in the mid-'80s, and I've been here ever since. And after a few years of working for him, I bought out part of his business and then ran my own business for 10 years, selling food at festivals and fairs and special events in Minnesota, North Dakota, Montana, and even as far south as Oklahoma. Put on a lot of miles and saw and experienced a lot of things. It was a good time. And eventually, while living here, got married, settled down, and dropped anchor, you might say. My wife, Becky, works at the hospital. I've been there for over 30 years. And my daughter, Christina, is a student at M State right now after graduating from Hillcrest herself a year and a half ago. There's lots of things to really like about Fergus Falls. And every year, for example, when the flags go up on the Veterans Walk of Flags, I think, isn't this a great place? Now this is coming Monday, Columbus Day, we'll see the pictures up again with the flags that come up. And I think about people like Perry Sheldon, who had the initiative to go out and start that. And here we are, years later, with hundreds and hundreds of flags, way beyond anything that he experienced. But I think that it's just a wonderful thing. People imagine Fergus to be kind of static and stationary, but I see it as a growing place. You know, when I graduated from Hillcrest, no one had even heard of a roundabout. And now, you know, beyond that is all developed in the whole West End and everything. So I'm glad to be a part of it. Maybe we're the tortoise, not the hare, but I think Fergus is a growing place, and I'm looking forward to being a part of it.
Thank you. Tom?
First of all, I'd like to say thank you to the Noon Kiwanis Club, to Sarah Duffy for moderating, and Jean Bowman for facilitating this great opportunity. First, and in the interest of full disclosure, I am a proud longtime member of the Fergus Falls Noon Kiwanis Club, as well as the immediate past president. When I filed to run for council, my club membership made sure to it that I had no input in selecting the questions for the forum or with the selection of moderator. That said, about me, I'm 36 years old, proud to say that I've lived in Fergus Falls for my entire adult life. I'm a homeowner and a taxpayer just like you. My wife and I both work at Lake Region Healthcare. I am the executive assistant to the administration, and she is a surgical services nurse. We have 3 kids, all under 10 years old, that attend our wonderful public schools. My favorite activity is our family time, most of which is spent at local parks, and I'm also trying to ride my bicycle as much as I can before the snow flies. I've served multiple terms on the Fergus Falls Public Library Board, including serving as its president, and I've also served on the boards of Clare Ann Shover and Twin Oaks Schools, president of each. I'm also the leader of my son's Cub Scout den. I presided over the Noon Kiwanis Club when our members worked closely with the city to reopen the Lake Alice skating rink, which was an overwhelming success and a huge win for our community. Our club looks forward to continuing to work with the community and with the neighborhood to grow the proud tradition. Why should you vote for me? I'm going to bring a positive attitude to the board, or to the council. I'm very optimistic. I will bring a can-do spirit to the council. If the residents of Ward 2 feel that there's a need, let's find a way to make it happen. It seems like it used to be, let's find a way to say no. I feel like let's find a way to make it work. I believe in responsible growth and investing in our future. I believe in being proactive and not reactive. I'll work with the council to plan for the future and to anticipate the future needs of the city. I believe that no city stands still. Either we're going to move forward and grow, or we're going to sit and watch the cars drive by on the interstate. Today I'm going to make the case for your vote on November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Steenbach?
I'd also like to thank anybody involved with this. I see some of our council members are here, and some very dedicated residents of our fair city. I'm Ted Steenbach. I live in Bayview Heights along with my wife Patty Norby. She's a lifetime resident of this Fergus Falls area. I grew up about 25 miles from here in Campbell on a farm. Retired in 2010 after 44 years of farming, debt-free. That's hardly something that no farmer can say. I went to school to be an agronomist. I worked for Dow Chemical alongside of farming for 30 years, and also served on many boards since I moved into Fergus 20 years ago. And I enjoy Fergus. Enjoy the residents. Most people know me or my wife very well, and I'm just striving to keep Fergus progressing. I guess the main thing I'm running for city council is that we used to have the nickname of our city council being a bunch of bobbleheads, and they just always say yes. And I'm a get her done kind of guy, and I enjoy working with people, talking to people. I will answer people's calls and questions. Nobody has a problem walking up to me and saying, can I talk to you a second? And they know I'm very open-minded. And with that, I'll thank everyone for coming.
Thank you. Now we'll move into our question-answer format. Again, each person will have 2 minutes to answer each question. We'll start the first question with Scott. And it is with large fluctuations in local government aid, LGA, this program and budgeting in general has been an item of concern for the city. Please comment on what you see as priorities the city needs to consider in regards to its budget.
Thank you. As I think about the budget priorities for the city, as you mentioned, and as the question reads, is that there's an assumption that the LGA funding has been fluctuating. And as I looked through the history, I find that actually the last several years it's been fairly steady, around $3.5 million a year. But there's a sense that, well, that could go away at any time. And that's the thing that I think bothers us, with this sense of fear that, well, what if it's cut in half, or what if it goes away altogether? There's a lack of trust in the state and what the state's going to do. And I don't know that it's just limited to our state. There's a lack of trust kind of across the board in national leadership in many places right now. And yet, I think that we as a city have got some very strong people in leadership positions that are able to see what needs to be done and still keep things going in a positive way for us. But as far as how I would approach this, I would want to approach our budget as though that money didn't exist at first. Work on setting what we need within the budget that we've got, not necessarily counting on that money, and then use it as we can for capital projects, or as Ruth in the forum on Monday had suggested, for capital projects, and not to look at using the LGA money for operations. I thought she made a good point in that regard, that if we were to depend on it for our operations, we could end up in a pickle if we lost it. The priorities that I would have, I see as a question of stewardship, where we have our emphasis. And our emphasis, in my view, should be first on safety, secondly on infrastructure, third on our facilities, and fourth on our culture and recreational opportunities in the city. My approach to the budget would be that we should be good stewards of what we've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Roofer.
First, I believe that we need to avoid any unreasonable tax increases. There are always going to be necessary budget items such as roads, utilities, and public safety. With that said, it's also very important to make investments in the future of our city in order to achieve our vision and grow responsibly. I will work with the council and the city staff to exhaust all available funding sources and explore efficiencies before I would consider raising taxes. We also need to make sure that we're collaborating with other cities and agencies to reduce the duplication of efforts as much as possible. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We need to keep an open mind. If someone else is doing something that's working well, why not give it a shot? Next, we need to be creative with our funding. Bemidji got $18 million from the state for their sports center. Rochester's getting $327 million for their destination medical center. If you walk into the Detroit Lakes Community Center, look at their donor board, right there on the top, the largest donor, state of Minnesota, $1 million. Colin Peterson's been our congressman for 25 years, Bud Nornis for 19 years. We need to work with them to make sure that Fergus Falls is getting its fair share. Projects funded with state and federal money will ensure growth in Fergus Falls while minimizing tax burden. Along these lines, one item on a lot of my residents' wish list is a water park. If Breckenridge can build and maintain one, I see absolutely no reason that we can't. I've met with Steve Plaza, our Parks and Rec manager, who's been a part of a water park project and would be an asset to our project. The key here will be taking full advantage of state, federal, and private fundraising dollars to make the project a reality without an unreasonable tax burden on our residents. Next is workforce development. There are more jobs in Fergus Falls than there are workers. We need to make sure that our workers have access to the training that our employers need and keep supporting the mechanisms in place to connect them. One of the things that's keeping some residents out of the workforce is daycare. There's a daycare shortage in Fergus Falls. My wife and I are both employed full-time with 3 young children, so I can directly relate to the struggles that families face when it comes to finding affordable care for their children. Thankfully, our city has numerous quality care providers, but we need more. I believe that we need to form public-private partnerships to increase the level of affordable care in our city to maximize the productivity of our workers. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Steenbach.
I guess my bottom line of the whole thing is the state really isn't that stupid that they won't go with a progressive city. And I think offering new business incentives, getting new jobs into the city, bringing more people into the city will increase everything in our city, increasing schools usage, library usage, whatever. standing still is like riding a bicycle. You can't. And so in order to go forward, you have to move. And a stalemate, as we've had in the past few years prior to the last election, has really been a bad situation for the city. And I think progressive people, new faces, new ideas are the way to look at this. I think the state would go along with a city that is going forward. They aren't going to work with a dead horse, in other words. So that's my take on this. You can talk all you want with numbers and all this stuff, but the people in the city are the people that make the city work, and we have to work together. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is, the city's 2016 budget is just over 42 million annually. Please tell us what about your budget and finance experience, demonstrating how you would be fiscally responsible candidate. And we will start with Tom.
Thank you. I started my career in finance as a licensed investment representative, obtaining licensure and education to help families grow and protect their nest eggs. I transitioned from that career into retail bank management, where I used the complete spectrum of financial products to meet the needs of families and business customers alike. After serving on numerous nonprofit boards, I understand the importance of finding creative ways to raise money and maximize every dollar while keeping expenses as low as possible. However, I do understand the importance of making sound investments in the future. I learned that there are some things you just have to spend money on in order to make money or to preserve a legacy. My most important experience has been managing my own family's budget. Just like every taxpayer in Fergus Falls, we have to maintain a balanced budget. We have to spend wisely and make the most of every dollar. If something is costing us too much money, we need to make changes. I also understand the importance of savings. Let's say your 3-year-old decides that he wants to take a dive off of the dresser, resulting in a trip to the emergency room and an unexpected CAT scan. He's okay, we think. I will, however, be the first one to admit that I don't have any experience running a city government. I plan to take full advantage of our highly competent city staff. Our city employees are extremely competent and include several that are experts in their field. Don't just take my word for it, ask your current council member, because that's what they've told me. After meeting with several department heads and city employees in the last months, I'm very much looking forward to working with Andrew Bremseth and his staff, and I look forward to serving in an advisory and oversight role in our city government. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Steenbach.
I can start back when I started farming in 1966. Farming was pretty hard back then. It's about equal to what it is today with the input costs and low commodity prices. I was property chairman of our local church, First Lutheran, for many years, controlling a $7 million building, budgeting each year for upkeep and whatever. I also worked with Dow Chemical, covering 10 counties for 30 years, and 52 dealers, 1,500 farmers, managing over $5 million area. I've done budgets most of my life, and with my history, I don't see any problem working with a few extra zeros on the end of a whatever you call it, budget, and you know, zeros are zeros. So I think up front, the main thing you have to do is have common sense, know what to do, where to spend, where to save, and I've done that. And so I guess that's about all I can say about that. It's just a common everyday occurrence for me. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Mr. Kwame?
My finance experience started when I was really little as a newspaper boy, and I had to go door to door collecting. Back in those days, you didn't get your money through the mail and whatnot. We had to actually go door to door and meet our customers. And I was also going door to door selling fundraising things for Boy Scouts. And as I went along, I was treasurer of student council in high school and just I've always had my hands in whatever was going on at the time. When I was in business then for 10 years, I had a payroll to meet, and I had expenses with equipment and contracts to meet, and I've been taught along the way the dangers of debt. I had an experience while I was in the concession business where I had been promised something in the way of a contract that I never ended up receiving the contract. But based on the promise I was given, I went out and bought some equipment on debt, expecting to get the contract, never got it, and I paid for that for 7 years. So I understand the dangers of debt, and I understand that keeping the city from any debt trouble is something we definitely would want to know, focus on that, not get in any trouble that way. I'm a member at Bethel Church here in town. I'm on the finance, facility, and stewardship team there. Most churches call it their trustee board. I've been through several different building committees here and elsewhere. Had to deal with plenty of zeros as well, with $1 million budget and lots of church committees and agencies to deal with and work with there. One of the favorite compliments I ever received from a friend of mine was that I ask good questions. And that's the way I believe I would approach the finance questions that we would have for the city. To understand really if we need things and why we need things so that we can justify what we're going to do. And in my work as a salesman, a win-win situation is what I'm after. And that's what I would be looking to accomplish as far as the finances of the city in Fergus Falls. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question pertains to economic growth, something that all three of you have touched on so far. Please describe your vision for economic growth in Fergus Falls and the steps that you will take to achieve progress toward that goal. And we will start with Ted.
Thank you. Economic growth pertains back to a man called Harold Stanislawski to me. He was a go-getter. He went out to find new businesses, was very good at it. And we really missed Harold when he left. And I've known Harold for many years, and he's never changed. The biggest thing for economic growth is new business. Like I said before, new business, new jobs, new people, new children, more interactive in the city, and all that brings in more business to our local firms that we have now. I guess the main thing I would say is the people representing a ward should visit with those people in that ward and talk to them, answer calls, meet with them consistently. I've even brought it up to the mayor that you should meet with the mayor at least once a month or whenever as an open forum. We have too many closed meetings. And I'm a very much of an advocate of an open meeting to progress anything going on in a city, and talk to your retail people, and they will talk to people and they'll find out what's going on. Retail customers will tell business people what the problems usually are. So, thank you.
Thank you. Scott?
I think we've got an excellent quality of life here in Fergus Falls. And when it comes to selling our city to a prospective new business or a new family, I think we've got something to sell. We've got great healthcare, we've got great schools, we've got a safe community. We've got great recreational opportunities, great opportunities for those involved in the arts in one way or another. So we've got something to sell, and I just really think that having that foundation puts us in a good position for economic growth. And for the city, specifically, I'd like to see us continue to support, continue to encourage, and continue to do what we can to work with all of the various groups that are out there selling our city. The Economic Improvement Commission, the Port Authority, the West Central Initiative, Chamber of Commerce, Convention and Visitors Bureau. All of these organizations, there are ways that we can support them and encourage them and work with them. One area that I would have to point out that I believe is a real black eye for the city is the mall. My daughter, college-age daughter, is pretty vocal about her opinion of the mall. And for her to leave town to go shopping elsewhere, to me, it just really drives me crazy. I find myself wanting to stay here and shop here first all the time, and I support the idea of shop locally. And if it isn't available here, I probably don't need it anyway. I'm not going anywhere. But for younger people, that's not necessarily what they think of. And I believe that we as a city can do something and can have some influence over things like the situation to get the mall looking better and being a better representation of what we've got. And one last thing I want to mention, on the last city council meeting, Len Taylor presented on the initiative to move forward with a single sort recycling process. And I think that's a fantastic way for us to stay out in front of the development of what's coming and what ought to be happening, not only for Fergus, but for our state and for our country. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom?
This spring, the Daily Journal ran a fantastic series on the top 25 attractions in Fergus Falls. I followed it closely, as did quite a few of the residents that I've spoken with. When I got to the top 10, I enjoyed hearing the speculation of what they might be. As the list counted down, I realized that more than a few of the guesses I had heard hadn't made the list. It's no fault to the great job of the Journal, but instead it made me realize that we don't just have 25 great things to do and see in Fergus Falls, but probably 50, probably more. My vision for economic growth is to capitalize on the assets that we have. By getting creative with our funding sources and making sure that we're getting our fair share of state and federal dollars, we will make the necessary investments in services, amenities, and activities that will continue to make Fergus Falls a place that people want to move to and a place that people will want to stay. Just last week, I had the privilege of meeting with residents of the Lake Alice neighborhood. We listed dozens of great things about the lake and then discussed plans to form a committee to make sure that we capitalize on the gem in the heart of our city. Next, imagine a vibrant riverfront with shopping, dining, and housing situated close to the excellent arts hubs located right here in our downtown. We want to attract workers to our city, plain and simple. We want to attract welders and fabricators, engineers and physicians, teachers and ministers. I also want to put strategies in place to encourage residents to shop locally. When these plans come together, we will be giving workers, more reasons to move to and stay in Fergus Falls. We'll bring in people that will eat in our restaurants, shop in our grocery stores and boutiques, and support our small and large employers alike. This in turn will increase our tax base, which will allow us to grow responsibly and invest in our future while, and this is important, maintaining our current reasonable tax levels. Thank you.
Thank you. As you, again, have all mentioned, there are a lot of things going on in the city. A lot of things that come to the council for your consideration. Going into this election, what are your top 3 priorities for the city? And we will start with Mr. Kwame.
The 3 priorities that I would see, first of all, would be to preserve the assets of the city. Secondly, to promote the growth, the economic growth of the city. And third, to promote the cultural and recreational growth of the city. On the first one, preserving the assets of the city, the infrastructure needs and requirements that we have for roads, water and sewer, the various buildings like this City Hall building that we're in, the airport, these kinds of infrastructure needs, we need to work to preserve them and maintain them and stay on top of those things. We also need to preserve the people that are a part of the organizations that run our city. And I'd like to see an emphasis on training for all of the people that work for the city in various departments. And as Tom mentioned, we've got some terrific people working for the city right now. And I think that keeping an effort to keep people trained to the highest level, whether they're working at the city shop as mechanics or whether they're working in the offices here in administrative positions, I'd like to see an emphasis on training to make sure that we've got the best people doing the best job possible. Again, as far as promoting the growth on an economic side, I'd like to remember, the various agencies, the EIC, the Port Authority, those agencies that we can encourage their efforts to to grow the economic side of our city, support the idea of shopping local, support the idea of promoting new technologies, things like the one-sort recycling that I mentioned earlier. But there's a danger here that we can't get involved with subsidizing retail businesses that would be competing with existing businesses. So there's a careful area there to deal with, but I believe that we can do it as a city. And again, I'd like to promote the growth of the cultural and recreational areas in the city, the downtown riverfront, and also water park. I think that we can do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Roofer.
First is workforce development. One example is a shortage of manufacturing and fabrication workers. We need to work with our public schools and programs such as the Modern Manufacturing Lab to partner with local employers to make sure that our students are getting the hands-on education and experience that they need to jumpstart a successful career that pays a living wage. Another example of a program that we need to support is the Rural Rebound Initiative, a collaboration between the Economic Improvement Commission and Otter Tail County. This program is aimed at the people that are starting to move out of the metro and back towards rural Minnesota. Another is the Live Wide Open Initiative, showcasing the people who have chosen to make our area their place to live and work. I don't think that we can be proactive enough about giving these people and others a reason to live and work in Fergus Falls. We need to grow our tax base. As the number of people and businesses paying tax in our city increases, the individual burden will decrease. This means that we can keep our taxes level and get more done. The more amenities and services that we can advertise, the more people and businesses will want to come here. Growing our tax base should be front of mind when we're setting our vision for the future. Next, we need to capitalize on the assets that we have in place. To name a few, the Central Lakes Trail, North Country Trail, Day Lagoon Park Master Plan, Lake Alice. I don't have time to name them all, but we've got great momentum going on several projects, and I'm going to work to keep that positive momentum going. Our tourism and economic development personnel do a fantastic job of promoting our city, and I look forward to partnering with them in several initiatives that are in place to further grow and improve our city. Groups like Forward Fergus Falls have been addressing these items for a long time, and they're going to be key partners in our future development. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Steenbach?
Well, here we're coming from a common sense thing again. Our streets are a major situation. I know we're keeping up with what we can per year, but when we do a new street, why don't we do the manholes level? I don't have to mention that word to too many people. And in fact, I just pulled an ad out of the last midweek. Quality Auto has got pothole recovery. Well, I talked to Paul and the boys and said, I think we should have manhole recovery because $86 is a pretty darn cheap front alignment. I'm a car guy and I'm really critical. When people are weaving down the street trying to miss manholes, there's going to be accidents. Sometime they're going to forget there's cars over there and stuff. I'm for all this infrastructure and everything else, but let's get real and keep our city streets so people don't come into the city and say, what the heck kind of a road is this? You know, and they'll know that you don't go on this street or this avenue. People know that already, and it's just pathetic sometimes to hear people talk of why they don't drive a certain street. So I guess I'm for everything else, but let's keep our city decent to drive in, and so when people come to visit and explore and see all our beautiful assets and stuff, whether it be the Kirkbride, Lake Alice, whatever, let's have a decent place for them to drive on. Thank you.
Thank you. As you may know, or most likely know, a long-standing issue being addressed with the council has been the Kirkbride building. What is your perspective on the Kirkbride building? And we will start with Mr. Roofer.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the city employees, the city council, and all of the concerned citizens that have put so much time and effort into finding a solution for the Kirkbride. If elected, I will encourage civil debate, I will work to bring people to the table, and I will encourage compromise. What would I like to see? I think that's such an amazing, historically valuable building that has a place in the hearts of so many of our residents should absolutely be developed and preserved. I feel strongly that no matter what direction the site plan may go in the future, we need to preserve the historic tower. As I stated earlier, as your council member, I cannot vote for any project that might place an unnecessary tax burden on the residents of our city. We've been working for a decade to find a developer to come forward with a fully funded project idea. I do not believe that continuing to kick the can down the road is a fiscally responsible strategy. We need to come up with a viable plan in a timely manner before the end of this year in order to eliminate uncertainty down the road. Full preservation of the property is going to be very expensive, and I'm not willing to ask our taxpayers to foot the bill at the expense of progress in other areas. This is a perfect example of a situation where compromise is the only solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Steenbach?
First of all, the Historical Society has got the Kirkbride major access. And I agree also there's too many buildings, but we have to preserve some of them. And last year at our classic car show, I used the Kirkbride as a backdrop. Took over 200 pictures of show cars. People were so impressed with that picture that they would have paid us extra money to have that Kirkbride in the background. They couldn't believe that we had such a thing. People came from Grand Forks, Bismarck, all over. So we promoted the Kirkbride big time to over 200 people that came to our car show. It's a beautiful area. 4 years ago, I moved the car show up there. Asked Hal and the council if that was okay. They said, wonderful, promote the city. You don't believe how much extra stuff comes into this city when we have events like that. You can, it's free advertising virtually, and you can get people to come from hundreds of miles away to look at stuff just because they were here one day and saw something like this on a picture. And that person will show that next door neighbor or something that picture. I mean, a little bit goes a long way. So let's do what we gotta do, but let's do it.
Thank you. Mr. Kwame?
Well, with the question being my perspective on the Kirkbride, the word that I come back to is asset. In my view, the Kirkbride is a terrific asset for the community. Sometimes it's been described by others as an albatross, and I would disagree. I think it's a terrific opportunity for us. Kind of convenient, Ted, that you happen to mention being a car guy. My brother is a car guy, and for years he was a builder of specialty cars and street rods. And this is a Snap-on tool calendar from about 10 years ago, and this particular car right here, my brother built from a couple of cars that really were kind of crummy. One didn't run, and he took another one that was running but had a crummy engine and put some time and effort into it, and took that abandoned junk car, added some time, added some effort, had a good plan, and he ended up with a valuable asset. And my dad drove that car for many years, and a few years ago sold that car for over $35,000. It had modern technology in it. They took out the old V6 and put in a V8. It had air conditioning, it had power steering. It wasn't a 39 on the inside, but it looked pretty great on the outside. I think the Kirkbride has some opportunities that are similar. By putting in the technology and putting in the work it would take to improve this asset, I think it'll be a wonderful thing for the city down the road. You have to recognize Lori Mullen and the work that she's done to emphasize and look for ways to develop the Kirkbride, and the recent knowledge that we've gotten about the idea of using it as a place of healing. I think this needs to be supported, encouraged, and do all we can to see that come to pass. I think the best use of the Kirkbride is in that area. Place of healing is a great idea. I think that as a school, as a training facility, offices, I think those ideas are good. I don't think retail is a good idea. Some see the Kirkbride as a junk car in the tree row. My vision is that it's a performance, high-performance street rod. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last question today, we'll address the time commitment of being on the council. We'll start with Ted. And the question is, serving on the city council is a big time commitment and can be unpredictable. Tell us about your ability to serve in this capacity.
Well, they always said if you want to get something done, ask a busy person. Well, you can ask my wife. I'm kind of busy. Retired, of course. Prioritizing time and talents. Working for Dow Chemical, I hired and fired people in 30 years. Total commitment. You can see that with farming for 44 years. Volunteering at the courthouse, jail, Lions, barbershop. City council attendance. I brought up many issues that the council have done some action on. I want to be a friend of the city. There's an old saying, you either do it well or not at all. And that's what I plan on doing. I usually find time to do things, no matter what it is. It's just like if I need to buy something, I'll go find a job to make some money on. It's that type of thing. If you want to do something, you'll find a way to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kwame.
Well, regarding my time and my schedule and the requirements of being on the council, again, I work for Indigo Sign Works, and the main office is in Fargo. The company has 6 locations, and I'm tied to the location in Alexandria, but I only need to go there once or twice a week. I pretty much work from my home office, and I've got the time and the flexibility to kind of make things work for what's necessary. And I can see that as being a real advantage in this case. As a salesman, I've been able to focus on customer service and on finding ways to meet the expectations of my boss as well. In this case, I see the citizens, the people of Fergus Falls, they're the customers, but they're also the boss. We're going to vote on the library in a few weeks, for example, and we're going to hear from the citizens what they want on that. And the council has to be responsible to the boss, and they also have to serve the customers and seek that win-win solution. I guess that's the approach that I would have. I went a little long on my last question, so I'll quit early. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom.
Before I began my run for the council, I sat down with several city council members and the city support staff to try to gain the best possible understanding of the commitment that I would be undertaking. My wife and I discussed the issue at length to make sure that it was something that we wanted for our family. We stay rather busy between both working full-time and our kids' activities, but I've got the support of my amazing wife, and we're fortunate to have family in town that is very supportive as well. I understand that serving on the council is going to be a big commitment, but I feel that it's well worth it in order to keep Fergus Falls a great place to live, work, and raise a family. I hope to show my children and the next generation of leaders an example of how community service and a spirit of teamwork can make our community a better place that will continue to grow and prosper. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have come to the end of our question and answer session. We'll wrap up today by hearing your closing statements from each of you as to why your constituents should vote for you. You will have 2 minutes. We'll start with Ted, and then Tom, and then Mr. Kwame. Ted?
Well, again, I thank you for all coming. Main reason is to make Fergus Falls a beautiful city again. Years back, we used to have flowers downtown. We had otters downtown. It was a beautiful area. We drive around on the weekend and visit many small towns, and hanging baskets and beautiful, you can't believe the beautification that flowers do downtown. I guess people have to have a reason to come and visit, and they have to have a place to see that they're kind of overwhelmed with. Like we said, the Kirkbride, our parks, whatever. You go up to the RTC grounds, and I mean, the city just keeps it beautiful. We also have to remember our police force, our sheriff department, our fire department, and say excuse me, say thank you, because they're doing a wonderful job. I'm a guy that citizens don't have to be afraid to come and talk to. I want to be friendly, bring new attitude, think outside the box. I guess I'm your get-her-done kind of guy. Appreciate your vote on November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Roofer.
Well, thank you again to the Fergus Falls Noon Kiwanis, to Sarah and to Jean for this great opportunity. I'd also like to thank all of the council members and city staff that have taken their time to educate me and answer my questions. And I look forward to the opportunity to serve with you. Thank you as well to my opponents for contributing to a spirited debate. I would also like to thank the residents of Ward 2 for taking your time to learn about my positions. I would like to ask you for your vote on November 8th. And I want to hear from you. Please feel free to contact me through my website, tomroofer.com, where I will also be posting a link to this forum when it becomes available. Plain and simple, I'm a Fergus guy. I lived in Northfield for a time during middle school, but that didn't stop me from wearing my gold otter sweatshirt. I've always known that Fergus Falls was the place that I wanted to raise my family. I sincerely believe that we can make Fergus Falls the go-to destination to live, work, and play. We have wonderful, proud people in our city that want to see it grow and succeed. I look forward to bringing people to the table, listening carefully, and encouraging collaboration. We're not always going to get exactly what we want, but we can all get a lot if we learn to just give a little and listen to each other. By working together with the individuals and organizations that have made development a priority, we're going to continue to grow our city and give people more reasons to want to live and work here. I want to represent you in order to help the city move forward and grow responsibly. Fergus Falls has proud traditions and great people. Previous generations of leaders have made Fergus Falls a great place to live and work. My vision is that our future generations won't have to look any further than our city for the education and careers that will give them the tools to keep Fergus Falls the best city in the state. I will represent you, and I will make myself available to hear your thoughts and ideas. Success is best achieved through collaboration. Residents, city staff, and city council all have valuable input. I believe that leading the city isn't a competition. We will make progress by working together respectfully and through healthy compromise. That will be my approach if you elect me on November 8th. Let's build Fergus Falls together. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kwame.
Thanks. And thanks also to Tom and to Ted. This is kind of a unique situation for the city, having an open seat with no incumbent. And so you've got three real different choices. And hopefully you appreciate that. In addition to my time at Bethel working with the finance facility team, I'm also on the choir over there. And I want to mention that just as a way to understand kind of an approach to how things are. When you're in a musical group, you have to sometimes sing in harmony, sometimes sing in unison, sometimes you've got a solo, sometimes you got to be quiet. And I've been in different kinds of choirs or groups for many, many years, going back to when I was playing saxophone in an elementary school band. And even in marching band, you learn to march, you got your position, you got to learn where you're at, do that right. I think Fergus Falls is a wonderful place to live. I think it's a great place to raise a family. I've enjoyed working here, and I've had many opportunities, actually, to leave and have other jobs in other places around the country and other places. And I've done what I had to do to stay, because I love it here. And I think there's good reason for people to want to move here, be here, stay here. I've got an interest in the downtown riverfront development. I've got an interest in being a voice for Hillcrest and the private schools in town that sometimes are not so evident on the leadership level. But I'm going to ask good questions, and I'm always going to tell you the truth. Sometimes the news is going to be good, sometimes it's going to be what you want to hear, sometimes it's not. But you can trust me, I'm going to tell you the truth either way. I'm old enough to have used a rotary dial phone in a payphone booth. But I'm young enough to embrace the new technology and to see how it can be an advantage, how we can become more efficient, and how we can become better. I appreciate your vote on November 8th, and thank you for coming today.
Thank you. Well, I would like to thank everyone for coming today and our candidates as well. Join us tomorrow. We will meet the candidates from Ward 3, and on Monday we will meet the candidates for mayor. Also, please remember to vote on November 8th. The polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. and Ward 2 votes at the Armory National Guard. If anyone would like to stay around and have your own individual questions for the candidates, you can do so. They will stick around. We have a couple minutes before 1 o'clock. So thanks again for coming today, and hope to see you again at the other ones.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, Dad. Thanks, Dad. Good job. Thanks, Tom. Well done. Tom and Ted at the same time. Good Tom. Ted, Tom, Tom.
Hey, Ben. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Good to see you.